Amalickiah's army approaches Bountiful, multiple conquered cities in their wake. All that stands between them and the next prize is the small garrison led by Teancum. With no help coming, Teancum and his men sally out alone to confront the invaders. 5 years pass with no armed conflicts between the Nephites and Lamanites. This doesn't mean either side is being idle. Amalickiah continues his anti-Nephite propaganda, building his army strength, planning, watching, and waiting for the ideal conditions to strike at the Nephites. He can't have forgotten the disastrous raid on the city of Noah 5 years previous. His next attack must be better coordinated and timed if he's going to subject the Nephites under his rule. What makes this dream of his harder and harder to obtain is Moroni's continuous improvements to the city's fortifications. In addition to the basic ditch and earth barricade, he builds walls on top and then guard towers. Once again, common sense defenses similar to other time periods and geographies. Moroni also drives out the Lamanites living in the East Wilderness, which I'm assuming as the refugees stream south, they add more fuel to Amalickiah's propaganda campaign. Moroni then establishes new fortified cities there, the Nephites naming one after him. The record doesn't give detailed reasons for why Moroni does this. As far as possible military reasons, it would have simplified the frontier his armies need to protect, at least according to this map. Back in Zarahemla, a political movement against the reign of judges is growing strong, its members taking the name of kingmen. They really start to heat things up after the chief judge Nephihah dies, and his son Pehoran is elected to succeed him, putting up such a fuss that the system of government is put to vote, the majority of the Nephites opting to keep the reign of judges intact. It is during all this political turmoil that Amalickiah chooses to invade, and what I call the War of 7 Years begins. Amalickiah's timing is probably no accident. Political turmoil back in Zarahemla means Moroni is less focused on the border and less able to react to Amalickiah's attack. Amalickiah strikes the new city of Moroni first. Besides the major political points he gains by conquering the city named after his rival, his Lamanite subjects are probably eager to reclaim the lost land Moroni had driven them from. After the sudden fall of the city of Moroni, the refugees and many of the inhabitants of Lehi, and possibly Morianton, flee to the city of Nephihah, combining their forces to repel Amalickiah's supposed next move towards Zarahemla. But Amalickiah surprises them and heads north to the now weakened city of Lehi, conquering it and continuing along the eastern coast. As news of Amalickiah's invasion reaches Zarahemla, there was a call to strengthen the Nephite armies. The kingmen refuse to join in the fight, which infuriates Moroni. He petitions for and is granted permission to subjugate them. His army marches on the kingmen, conscripting and arresting them. Many kingmen resist, and upwards of 4,000 are killed. What a mess and what bad timing. The record seems to indicate that this kingmen movement spreads across many Nephite cities, not just Zarahemla. Confined to one city or not, Moroni has his hands full the entire year dealing with it, while Amalickiah plows up the coast, taking and garrisoning all the Nephite cities there. He doesn't stop and presses on toward the city of Bountiful. It's worth pausing to consider what Amalickiah's overarching strategy is here. Instead of attempting to drive through the center of the strong Nephite border, he's pierced the line at one end and plunged deep into Nephite territory. So what is he doing? I think two theories are the most likely. The more aggressive one being quickly secure Bountiful, cut into the soft upper Nephite lands, and then draw the Nephite military out of their fortifications for a decisive battle in the open, where it can more easily be destroyed. If this is the plan, it's definitely an ambitious one, and reminds me of how the Germans circumvented the heavily fortified French border through Belgium in World War I and again in World War II. The more conservative theory is a land grab, subjugating the locals, defending the new territory, and settling the land northward. If true, it's more of a long-term play against the Nephites instead of an endgame attack like the other theory. It's also possible Amalickiah is considering both and hasn't decided yet. Or, of course, has something completely different in mind. We never find out because Teancum with his small army heads off the massive invasion force in the wilderness. Very little detail is given about this battle, which is unfortunate because I think it's one of the most pivotal battles in Nephite military history. In warfare, you want to seize and retain what's called the initiative, when you decide the next move and your enemy is reacting to you. So far this year, Amalickiah has been deciding where to attack, and the confused Nephites have been frantically scrambling to react. Teancum's choice to fight at Bountiful's border and not from the city itself, while possibly influenced by the city's lack of strong fortifications at the time, can also be seen as Teancum seizing what initiative he can. From the little the record does say, it sounds like the Lamanites are now frantically reacting to the Nephites in this battle. Let's consider how the tables could turn like this. If I were Teancum, the last thing I would want would be to formally meet Amalickiah's army in an open field battle where he can bring all his numerical superiority to bear. When facing a much larger force, one of the few advantages you can have is the quicker maneuverability of your small force. So instead, I'm guessing Teancum plans to surprise and hit Amalickiah's army while it's on the move and strung out. Maybe Teancum chooses to attack in terrain conducive to exposing Amalickiah's army in this way. The record describes Teancum's men as harassing the invaders until it is dark, which makes me think he sets up ambushes on weaker sections of Amalickiah's force, possibly even subdividing his elite troops into smaller independent units to better exploit the terrain and keep the Lamanites reeling with hit-and-run tactics. No matter how the battle played out, this is one impressive military operation by Teancum. The Lamanites are pushed back, losing the momentum they've had all year, and the Nephites get a morale boost from the victory. The bad news for the Lamanites doesn't stop there. After their exhausted army makes camp on the beach, Teancum sneaks in and quietly kills Amalickiah in his tent, adding Amalickiah's name to a long list of military assassinations throughout history. Finding their king dead, particularly on the morning of the new year, is likely interpreted as a tremendously bad omen by the Lamanite army. And like any ancient army would do, they take the bad omen seriously and flee into the fortified city of Mulek. Amalickiah's brother Ammoron is soon appointed king. He leaves behind his men to defend the cities they've taken and returns to tell the queen the news. Ammoron then gathers a second army to renew the attack that same year. The speed with which Ammoron accomplishes this makes me suspect this reserve force has been semi-prepared the whole time. He strikes somewhere along this border. Even with Moroni eventually joining in the defense of this area, apparently the kingman problem under control for the time being, Ammoron is still able to take 4 cities before his offensive peters out, calling off an attack on the city of Judah after seeing the Nephites get reinforcements. Now, I've got a lot of thoughts about Ammoron's decision to attack here, but for now, let's just look at the results. The Lamanites have lost the initiative for a second time, and the conflict grinds down to a war of attrition, where both sides play a long, deadly game of defending, supplying, and taking cities from each other, trying to wear down the other's will to carry on the fight. Ammoron has his work cut out for him. With 2 different fronts, both in enemy lands, his supply lines are much longer than the Nephites. In addition, his Lamanite subjects are carrying out the fight in foreign lands, while the Nephites are fighting for their home turf. As this war drags on for another 5 years, who do you think has a better chance of keeping up supply and the morale to fight? Probably the Nephites. Not to say the Nephites have an easy road ahead. While they are extremely fortunate that the Lamanite offensive has sputtered out, they still have lost 10 valuable, well-fortified cities. All the hard work they put into those city defenses is now being enjoyed by the Lamanites. Not good. Plus, supplying and defending 2 different fronts, even ones closer to home, is still a challenge, particularly when there is so much political turmoil back home with the kingmen. And spoiler alert, that turmoil will flare up again before this war is over. One could say the Nephites are fighting 3 fronts if you count for that. After the rapid Lamanite advances the first 2 years, the chessboard is now set for a long, bloody war that will last another 5. Watch the next videos to see which side makes the next decisive move in the War of 7 Years. Thanks for watching.